My name is Connie, and I'm a 23-year-old gender-fluid male. I work by choice as a full-time live-in housemaid, a role I've embraced for almost a year now. But let me tell you my rather unusual story and how it all began. I was born as Alex Thompson, the only child to a well-off family. I grew up a privileged boy, attending the best private schools and eventually a prestigious university where I was studying applied economics. I always thought I was probably destined to succeed my father as the president and CEO of the large real estate company he started over a generation ago, though that wasn't really going to happen after the developments I'll mention shortly. Ever since I can remember, I've had strong inclinations to be in the shoes of a female domestic servant. I never truly understood that tendency, and over the years, I did try on many occasions to fight it, but it always came back with a vengeance, stronger than before. I am totally heterosexual and very fond of girls, but I am equally fond of the clothes they wear, and in particular, I am obsessed with the work clothes associated with maids and female cleaners. I am totally transfixed when I come across a maid or a cleaner wearing their working dresses and matching aprons. I can't really take my eyes off them. My parents were the exact opposites of each other and very traditional in their respective roles. My father, Mr. Thompson, was the strong-minded, highly opinionated guy who was always right. He was big and slightly overweight, but he loved my mother, or this is what I was thinking at the time, as he was always polite and never cruel to her. My mother, Eleanor, was a petite, very feminine woman and the intellectual of the family. She was always with a book in her hands, an active member of various book and cinema clubs, and not at all involved in any housekeeping. I often had the impression that she was absent-minded and self-absorbed in her own world, something that, as I found out later, was some sort of facade and her defense mechanism, since my father was not what he appeared to be after all. As a result, the house was run by our live-in housekeeper, Isabel, a bright and competent Filipino woman in her mid-30s who had been with the family for many years. I vividly remember when she had first arrived to work for us. I was then in my early teens, probably about 14 years old. As you can imagine, I was very much focused on Isabel because she was all that I wanted to be. She was an educated woman and had a degree in nursing, but she had to follow the destiny of so many Filipino women who had to migrate in order to support their large families back home. Isabel had been married and divorced already and had 2 young children who stayed behind and were looked after by her parents, so she had to provide for them. Isabel's status at our home had been seriously upgraded because of my mother's lack of interest in any involvement in the running of the house. So Isabel was responsible for all the shopping, cooking, cleaning, laundry, and ironing. Our house was large, a 4-bedroom freestanding 2-story mansion surrounded by a largish garden, so her amount of work was immense, but she wasn't the complaining type, and she was very well paid. I liked Isabel and admired her a lot, and I often fantasized about being in her shoes. My only complaint was that she wasn't obliged to wear a maid's uniform. My parents were quite liberal and relaxed like that, and after all, Isabel was not a typical maid. She was a housekeeper. She loved to be in a dress, though. When she was working at home, she had several bright-colored, printed cotton dresses she was buying online and sent to her from the Philippines. They were called duster dresses and were considered house frocks back in her country. She was also wearing large, practical cotton aprons when on duty, so you had the impression that she was looking like a slightly old-fashioned housewife rather than a maid. The shift. And then something had happened that drastically changed our lives. My father simply announced one morning that he was leaving us. He was going to move out. I was 22 when that happened, and in my last year of studies. I still vividly remember that cool spring morning when, after breakfast, my father addressed me in the presence of my mother, who had stayed quiet all along. That he was leaving us and later in the day someone would come to pack and take away his personal belongings. I wanted, of course, to ask lots of questions, but he said, somehow embarrassed, that all was settled and agreed, and my mother would explain everything to me. Within minutes, he had picked up a small suitcase, like the ones used for short business trips, and left. Afterwards, my mother, remarkably calm, explained to me that my father had an affair for some time now with his closest assistant at work, a certain Miss Sarah Jenkins that I'd heard of but never met. She said that it was written in the cards and a result of a not very compatible coexistence between her and my father. But he had been very generous to both of us. He had left the house to my mother and a generous yearly allowance to cover the running costs of it, including Isabel's salary. He had also left enough money for us to comfortably survive for the foreseeable future. On top of that, my mother had a private income through her parents, so all in all, we were not to be destitute. I had mixed feelings after that. The truth is, I've never felt comfortable in the presence of my father. I always had the feeling that I wasn't the right sort of son for him. I was certainly taking after my mother in looks and size. I was small in stature and very skinny, with delicate features and nothing very manly about me. I was always called, to my total embarrassment, a pretty boy at school, though I had never been effeminate, just small and delicate looking. We were sitting uncomfortably, looking at each other around the breakfast table after my father's sudden departure, when my mother stood up unexpectedly and approached me, a sweet smile on her face. She made me stand up and gave me a strong hug, something that I wasn't at all used to. "Everything will be fine, Alex. I have a feeling that both of us, plus our Isabel, will feel much more relaxed and comfortable after the departure of your father. His presence was intimidating and often overbearing for us all, am I not right?" I looked at her, totally surprised. I wasn't used to gestures like this, but I had to agree with her, so I simply said, "Yes, Mother, you are right, and I am pleased to see that you took the whole thing rather well." "Well, I have been prepared for that for a long time now, Alex, so yes, I'll be fine." After that morning, our lives started to gradually change for the better for all three of us. The big bad wolf wasn't around anymore to intimidate us. The biggest change I witnessed was in my mother. Her usually sad and unhappy disposition changed to a happy one. Her eyes got back a sparkle I remembered from when I was a young boy. She started laughing again, and for the first time, I saw her joking with Isabel, who started calling her by her first name, Eleanor, and not Mrs. Thompson anymore. The revelation and transformation. Several days later, as we were finishing breakfast, my mother turned to me and said casually in the presence of Isabel, who incidentally was sitting with us to eat. She was still doing the preparation and serving of food. But there was a seat for her at our table now. "Would you like to assist Isabel with the housework, Alex? She could certainly use another pair of hands in a big house like this one. Observing you during the past few days, I can see that you are bored and you don't really know what to do with your time. I know you have your university classes to follow, but you don't seem that involved at the moment." I blushed all over when I heard that. My mother was touching my secret chord. How did she know? At that moment, Isabel added in her correct but accented English, "Come on, Alex, we both know that you would love that. I know you for many years now, and I can feel how much you would enjoy housework. You don't have to worry anymore. Your father is not around to judge you, and I can tell that you have a stash of suitable clothes hidden at the back of your cupboard, clothes that you could probably use if you decide to become my assistant." Blushing all over again, I managed to say, "What do you mean, hidden clothes? Have you been prying in my cupboard, Isabel?" "I wouldn't call it prying, rather trying to tidy up your cupboard," Isabel answered, a cunning smile on her face. "You shouldn't really worry, Alex dear," my mother continued. "I always knew that you have a feminine side. Mothers can feel that, and you shouldn't worry about it. We live in a gender-fluid world now. I read a lot about it. We even had a special lecture about trans and gender-fluid people in our book club the other day." I looked at them, eyes wide open. Those two women were ahead of me. They managed to analyze and open me up in a few sentences. I decided at that moment to be frank and open with them as well. Yes, I admit it. Housework fascinates me, and I always watch Isabel when she is doing it. There is something magic and cathartic to it, I said rather boldly and continued, "What am I expected to do? Let Isabel become your tutor. You can be her junior maid and follow religiously her instructions," my mother vividly said. She used the words junior maid, and that sent a jolt of excitement through my body. Would I be able to fulfill my long-standing dream and put my maid's uniform on, the one I believed was well hidden in my cupboard? Isabel answered that question before I even had the chance to absorb what I'd just heard from my mother. Why don't you go back to your room, Alex, and put on this nice gray maid's dress I saw in your cupboard, also a neat white bib apron that goes with it, and some comfortable sneakers you keep there. Then we can start your training." The way they were talking to me was surreal, as if it was the most natural thing in the world to go and put a maid's uniform on. I looked at both of them, a question mark in my eyes, as if I was asking for a confirmation of what I'd just heard. My mother gave me another of her totally benign smiles and added, "Come on, darling, it's not such a big thing. You are not going to lose your sex by dressing in a maid's dress and apron. You will still be a boy in a dress, a boy who happens to love housework and is accordingly dressed." I was finally convinced because I so much wanted this to happen. So, without another word, I stood up and started climbing the stairs towards my room. As I was leaving, I saw the exchange of a meaningful look between my mother and Isabel. Had they planned all that in advance? Was there an ulterior motive behind that? At that particular moment, I didn't really care. All I wanted was to put my maid's uniform on and start working under the guidance of Isabel. The whole prospect was immensely exciting for me. Training and new identity. 15 minutes later, I was back downstairs, and I hesitantly headed towards the kitchen where I could hear pots and pans noise. Isabel must have been already doing the washing up. Was my mother still around? As I entered the kitchen, Isabel, sensing my presence, turned back from the sink and looked at me. Dressed in her usual duster dress, full bib apron and rubber gloves, she was the picture of domesticity. "My God, look at you. You make a very convincing girl, Alex, even without makeup on. You were so cute in your uniform. I love your light gray clogs as well, so matching with the rest," she said, and added, "You even have a girl's waist, not hourglass, but definitely a defined waist, nicely accentuated by the tight apron." I was blushing all over again, and I managed to give her a smile. "Thank you, Isabel. I feel right in those clothes. They give me a sense of purpose." "I'm ready to assist you any way you want," I gingerly said, lowering my eyes and using my hands to smooth down my pristine white apron, looking at the hem of my dove gray dress as it stood a couple of inches below my knees. "Two more things, though, before we start. We have to do something with the lack of boobs. Your dress needs some curving in front, so you need some moderate breast forms, A, B, or C size. And we have to give you a proper name. You can't be Alex dressed like this. Any ideas? Have you been using a female name?" Blush again as I replied, "No, I never thought of that. I never really seriously used those clothes. I tried them on, of course, but it is the first time that someone other than me sees me in a dress." "Well, I can help you there. I just thought of a name for you. I have a first cousin who is back in the Philippines now, but we started working together in this country many years ago as maids. Her name is Ganda Apuya, but we all call her Connie, so I think that Connie would be a great name for you. Do you like it?" "Yes, I like it," I said, feeling the familiar jolts of excitement through my body again. And then, remembering that my mother hadn't seen me yet in a dress, I asked, "Has my mother gone out?" "Yes, Connie, Mrs. Eleanor has gone out for shopping and meeting friends. She will be back later today, and she is looking forward to properly meet the new junior maid. And let me add this. When you are Connie, you will be formal with her. After all, she is the mistress of the house, so you will address her as Mrs. Thompson or Madam." Then, before I had time to absorb that, she added, "Right, Connie, time to start your proper training. And here is the #1 rule. You never start work in the rest of the house until you are certain that the kitchen is immaculate. That must become your motto from now on. Kitchen first, bathrooms afterwards, always inspected, tidy and clean. So take the antibacterial spray and a cloth and start wiping down the countertops. Then you can sweep and mop the floor. In the meantime, I'll finish the washing up and tell you what to do next." "Yes, Isabel," I replied as I opened the cupboard below the sink where I knew she kept the kitchen cleaning stuff. The new reality. That was the beginning of my surreal and yet very real life. That was the beginning of my gradual descent to the humble life of a female domestic. There was no cruelty involved. Both my mother and Isabel were very correct and polite with me. But as the days and the weeks were going by, subtle changes were happening. My mother was addressed by me at all times as Madam or Mrs. Thompson, and Isabel was addressed as Miss or Miss Isabel. I don't remember when it exactly happened, but at one point I became Connie 24/7. With Isabel's assistance, I developed an adequate wardrobe of female clothes. I had several practical uniforms now, plain front-button polyester/cotton dresses in various pastel colors with matching aprons. I also had a few duster dresses that Isabel ordered online for me from the Philippines and proper underwear, female, but not fancy. I had my C-size breast forms permanently glued in position, and my hair was long enough to be fixed by Isabel into a feminine bob. Finally, I started wearing modest makeup. My features were soft anyway, so I was adequately convincing as female to all outside eyes. In the end, to all people involved, I was Connie, the live-in housemaid of the Thompson residence. Mrs. Thompson was the mistress of the house, and Isabel, whose status was even more elevated now, was her companion. I simply was the maid. Mrs. Thompson's social life was thriving, and she started inviting people to the house. She was inviting once a week some of the people belonging to her book club for book reading and a glass of wine afterwards. This particular day, I was very smartly dressed in my black uniform dress and white half apron, taking care of the guests, serving drinks and finger food. Nobody had any idea that the maid who was serving them used to be the son of Mrs. Thompson, and I preferred it that way. I thrived in my humble anonymity, and I was happy to be appearing as Connie the maid. That was my life now, that is what I wanted to be. And before I conclude this short encounter of my life, I might add here that Mrs. Eleanor and Miss Isabel are lesbian lovers for some time now. They both have negative feelings and experiences from the aggressive males in their previous lives, and they also have another gender-fluid male to take care of them as their humble housemaid. They have the best of both worlds.